Hello, everybody. Welcome to the State of Our Workforce. Where are we now? Each month, we take a deep dive into the diverse, innovative, and effective workforce solutions the National Fund Network is adopting to address local challenges across the country. My name is Michelle Wilson. I'm the Director of Evaluation National Fund. I am so excited to have Anne Kandilis, Director of Springfield WORKS, one of our collaborative partners located in Springfield, Massachusetts, joining us today. Hi, Anne. How are you?
Hi, Michelle. I'm well. How about you?
Good. I always enjoy talking to you. So it was a pleasure. It was exciting when I learned that you were going to be our guest for today. So welcome. You ready to dig in?
Ready.
Okay.
Happy to be here.
So Springfield Works, your collaborative has been a part of the National Fund since 2016, and you all formed with leaders in the community to really drive impact model with the goal of removing systemic and racial barriers and opening up equitable access and economic growth for everybody. So I'm really curious, when you think about the work that you've been doing since 2016, what are you really excited about and where do you see some of the challenges?
So we were formed in 2016. So we were a Working Cities Challenge city. So the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston city, and we joined the network in 2021, and what was the National Fund Network in 2021, and we kept seeing, wow, what this national fund is addressing the same issues we are, and so it was really both comforting and also illuminating to say what would it be like to be part of a national network to address the challenges. And some of those challenges, like so many others we've learned, is activating employers to make jobs better. What are those jobs? How do we actually create better jobs in traditional occupations that are low wage? And so that's one of the biggest challenges, is really creating better jobs and activating employers to participate in that.
Okay. So when you think about the highlights of some of the work that you've done, what would you point out?
Some of the highlights are really creating, really breaking down silos, right? So Springfield is, I always like to say about Springfield, is that we're rich in programs and poor in systems. And so when we look at what we needed to focus on, is we needed to say, what do we have that's working? And then and then also, what is also keeping us sort of entrenched into old ways?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think what we've done really well is to bring employers to the table, community-based organizations, our workforce board, and our career centers, to say, to really identify and address some of the really systemic issues that have just been almost feeling intractable sometimes.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we talk about this work and why it matters, particularly when we think about occupational segregation and how we disrupt that. I mean, because you've been part of the work and part of the discussions that we've been doing at the National Fund about what it really means to disrupt the drivers of occupational segregation, because occupational segregation is so huge. Like, how do you wrap your arms around it? And so our focus at the National Fund is just like really digging in and going, a few layers deep around particular drivers that we can disrupt. And so one of the things that, you shared, and when we were prepping for this, was just about some of the fast growing jobs in Massachusetts and in the area around, like, personal care, early education, CNA, and all of those things. So just curious about why, and we're going to get into the systems change work in a minute, but why this matters to the work that you're doing, and why do we need to pay attention to this?
We have a wonderful opportunity to support all of our residents. And as we come in and out of different economic environments, we can really see that not everybody is succeeding when economically, we're in a good spot, right? We had 10 years of huge economic growth, and yet we had, you know, um, large areas in our community that just weren't prospering, and we needed to dig into that. And so it really matters, because if we don't have all prospering, then none of us will. And in our community, and I was born and raised in Springfield, and I've worked in other places, but our community is so rich in assets, in culture, in diversity. So it matters that we provide opportunities for all. And that takes a lot of work. So it matters. And the how is tough. The why I got. The how is something we work on all the time.
It's something. It's a continuous. It's continuous. The how matters. So one of the hows is really through systems change, and I know that's again, you guys have been working, looking at this from a collective impact approach, and systems change is certainly a part of that. Think about systems change. What does that mean for you all?
That's one of the things the National Fund had really helped crystallize. And we've been talking about systems change since we started with the Working Cities Project back in 2016. I joined in January 2017. And it was all about transformation and systems change, which feels really big, right? That's like, what does that mean? And the National Fund actually, working with Ricardo and Abby, who you'll probably mention, it was solving a problem. Systems change is about solving a problem. And sometimes what we do is we define that problem really, really way too big, right? So what's the problem you really want to solve? And then how might we go about that? And so systems change work, should lead to more questions. How might we? And what if we? And that's what the National Fund, sort of kept digging into in one of our early projects with the National Fund around the systems lab thinking work. And that really helped us, take something that, again, feels so intractable and big, and start defining and putting together a strategy to really deal with the problems.
I mean, so what I appreciated about what you're saying is that I don't know how recognize or realize that all of our work at the National Fund builds off of, previous work. And so, the systems change work, which is led by Ricardo Enriquez and Abby Wood, they run the systems change portfolio at the National Fund, was, based off of some work we did around the equity reports. And so I want you to talk, because you guys got in on the systems change lab work, and that helped define your work. But can you talk a little bit about how that morphed or moved you into other pieces of work when we think about that connection? Because I know that brings you into another solution with other rock stars. You want to talk about that?
So when we got into the systems lab work, it was I invited the workforce board to join me in that project, and a member of the Western Mass Economic Development Council, which is our backbone organization. And so when we dug into that problem, or when we identified what do we want to do together, we really were looking at the healthcare sector. So the workforce board runs the Western Mass Nursing Collaborative, and we said, again, one of our fastest growing industries is in healthcare and social assistance. So when we looked at the systems and the problem we wanted to solve, it was around retention, and around, how do we retain? How do we make jobs better but what really we needed to do, and as we work together with Ricardo and Abby and our partners, it was really also going way back to the beginning and looking at some root cause issues around career mobility in the healthcare space. And that really led us to looking at enrollment in education and higher ed, and also look at, so we looked at enrollment, but we also looked at completion. And we said, we have to separate what's happening on the way up to before somebody gets hired, or while they're in an entry level position, what is happening in the career mobility space around enrollment, completion, and what were some of the challenges that our workforce experienced while they're trying to work and go to school. So it just kept building and building, and that was sort of the ground floor of where we decided to take our work in this project.
And so, and that then morphed into a space where you start doing your community college work, which led into another body of work, the National Fund with Carrie Felton.
Yes.
Well, I mean, they're all rocks. I'm Carrie Felton and Brittany Cord, who lead the Equipping Workers for Success body of work at the National Fund. So you want to talk about how that morphed? That's where that comes in?
Yeah, so then we invited Holyoke Community College and our large healthcare employer, Bay State Health, as well as others, to have this conversation around what would it look like if, knowing what we know, as we started to dig into the root cause of half of our students not making it through year one of the Foundations of Health program to nursing. What would it look like if we actually created a learning work model? So together, over 18 months, and we just submitted this grant. It's never been done before in Massachusetts with the Workforce Board, is to say, okay, what if we created a pay to train model? So now incumbent employees are working and being paid to learn while they're studying. And so what this really led to was a new model to say, what would happen if we create a learning in the workspace and our workers are paid while they're learning as well as working. And so it's a reduced workload, and it's also, and they're full-time employees, full benefits, creating, stackable credentialing which will take them from a $16 an hour job to a $32 an hour job. And so, I mean, this was the project that actually brought this group together.
That's fantastic. And I just want to keep an eye on time because I want to give you an opportunity to talk about how we continue doing this work. But I will also say you guys are also doing some human-centered design. We could spend a whole bunch of time talking about this and digging into it a little bit and talk. When you think about occupational segregation, we think about doing, creating an equitable economy for all. What do we need to do less of? What do we need to continue doing? And what do we need to do more of as you think about that?
One of the things we do really, really well is we innovate. And sometimes when we want to do more of something, sometimes we think we need to do more innovation. But sometimes we also need to just dig deeper. And so we do some innovative work. And instead of moving on to the next thing, which is what we often do in the workforce space, like what's the new innovation, what's next, we need to say, what else can we do to deepen what it is we're doing now in order to really have the impact we're looking for? So I think we do less. So we never do less innovating, but we don't give up too soon on what that really looks like. And the National Fund does a great job in both making occupational segregation visible, but also asking the questions to say, what else, how might we? And instead of moving to sort of the next new shiny thing, we could just keep digging deeper. And you've been investing in that, in us, and in the network members, in asking the next question and digging deeper. So I think that we do. So it's a balance of innovation and depth, and I love the way you do that.
And obviously, I mean, our work we could not do what we do if we didn't have, 34 amazing collaboratives out in the field in partnership with us on this. So as we wrap up, Anne, I want to give you an opportunity for the last word and and what's action for, I don't know, for a particular audience, but you work in a collaborative space, you work with a collaborative, but for collaboratives out there, groups and communities who are doing this work, what's the call of action?
The call to action is to invest in things like the systems lab, where you create the time and space for us to collaborate. Everybody's just trying to get through the day and do their day job, but this requires time and investments, to give us time to think and create and co-create. So I would say that the call to action is for the funding communities, the participating communities, organizations, to, collaboration and collective action really means something, and investing in that, I think, is really what's needed. If we're going to really deep, be able to sort of overcome and create the opportunities we're talking about, to drive equity and access.
Okay. I apologize for the noise. I'm not sure why they decided to do. I thought we were done with yard work, but apparently we're not. But at any rate, Anne, I want to thank you for your time. Reach out to Anne if you have questions. She's always been really gracious about her time and talking about the work. So, Anne, I have deep appreciation for you. That does it for us today. And join us next month when we continue our conversation on the state of our workforce.
Thank you. I enjoyed